Thank you, Christo. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for inviting me. Yes, so my name is Mårten Mickos, and I was the CEO of MySQL. I'm not anymore. And I am an alumni from this college here, so that's why I'm here today to speak about starting a business and sort of condensing all my advice into what I would do today if I started a business. But of course, there's always this conflict that when I started businesses, I didn't have the experience. And when I ran MySQL, I wasn't an experienced CEO. So I'll start with a disclaimer that I hope that you all remember that inexperience is just a fantastic asset to have. So don't listen too much to advice. And I won't take questions during my presentation, but I'll wait for Christina then to interview me. Maybe she will allow questions from the audience. I don't know, but it's up to her. And I'll just go through the presentation and the slides here. Let's see. Is that the page now? So, my goal, my wish for you is that you will start a lot of new businesses. And that's why I start by saying, here's to a lot of failure. Because if this group doesn't encounter a lot of failure, then this group also doesn't produce success. And each single person here, if I talk to you, I will wish you the best of success, and I will genuinely hope so. But as a portfolio, as a big group, I know that many of you will have to fail so that a few of you can succeed. And to me, this is one of the biggest problems with Finland, which is otherwise a fantastic country with the best education, the best competitiveness, and the best honesty, and the best everything on every formal measurement. But Finland is a country where you're not allowed to fail, and you're also not allowed to win in business. So if you fail, everybody feels sorry for you, and they won't hire you anymore. And if you succeed, they'll sue you, or they'll write stories about your boat running on ground or something. Whatever you do, they'll just go after you. So the best advice to anybody in Finland is just to stay mediocre and not try to do too much and not too little. This is what in Norway and elsewhere is known as the Jante law. You know, don't think you are anybody. But if you are, as I believe in the high-tech sector, if you're really thinking about a growth business, and there are many other businesses, you don't have to do growth businesses, you can do just steady-state businesses, which is great. But if you go for growth businesses, then you by definition have to go global. And when you go global, you're competing with the Chinese and the Indians and the Brazilians and the Americans. And they are much less afraid of failure and afraid of winning. So if you are to survive there, you must adapt to the conditions. So that's why if 10 years from now, there's an article in a Finnish newspaper saying that Aalto Entrepreneur Society produced a lot of failures, that will probably be good news, because there will also have been a lot of some success, which amounts to a lot of success. So I'll give you a little bit of background. I'm perhaps now most known for having been the CEO of MySQL for about 8 years, 7 years as CEO and 1 year as head of the business, and as the only CEO that MySQL ever had. So there's some information on what it looked like when I joined in 2001 and what it looked like in 2008 when Sun acquired us. And just to whet your appetite, I put there that the founding shares of the MySQL company, the shares owned by the founders in 2001, grew their value 40 times over 8 years. So if you are company founders, that's sort of what I can offer you as an ambition level. And of course, we had no idea where this would end up, and I can tell you that Holtron, our first investor, they had internally been talking that if MySQL ever reaches a value of $50 to $100 million or euros, that would be a home run. But this is sort of what can happen when not everything goes right, but when you are very lucky and a lot of things go right. But a lot of things also went wrong, and I'll go through some of them in the presentation here. So I'm a big fan of quotes, and I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill and Field Marshal Mannerheim and other people I never met, but I just think they were really smart. And Churchill said it so wonderfully, that success consists of going from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm. That's success. So I'll show you what I mean. So here's some background on me. I'm an old guy by now, so some of you could be my kids. I studied technical physics or engineering physics. We called it technical physics back then here. And I even graduated finally. And here is my professional career. So in '87, I started a company with two of my college friends. I worked for the Finnish State Computer Center. I worked for a project management software company under the guidance of Juha, who is here in the audience somewhere. Juha Hyninen, there you are. I worked for Solid, a database company, Intellitel, which was telecom communications. Match on Sports was one of the biggest .com booms and busts in Finland. And then I had my own little company for a while, and then MySQL. And now I'll show you how this reflects in terms of success and failure. So this is sort of revealing my inner self and my person. But here's my career. So I always had a certain level of ambition, and there was sort of a certain outcome of what I did. And when we started Polygon, we had reasonably small ambitions, and we exceeded them. We really felt like heroes. We were running this company, we were sought after all over Europe, we were the best expert on this one programming language. We did projects in France and Germany and Norway, and we really felt like, like we could do anything, like anybody of that age will do. And then from there, I sort of got lured into this export project at the Finnish State Computer Center. So of course I said, I can do more, so I'll increase the ambition level. But then what happened? Then we failed. So the project itself didn't really go anywhere. And 2 years after that, I left the company because things just went sideways and it didn't work out. And then I went to the next company where we had even higher ambitions, and we didn't really accomplish what we were hoping to accomplish, but we got almost there. So it was sort of a success. But then when you look at where all these things were heading, and look at 4, 5, and 6. So forget about the other steps in my career. If you are over 6 years experiencing that sort of a catastrophic direction of your career, so that ultimately Match on Sports went bankrupt. I had left the company by that time, but there are not many people who remember that. They just remember the company I was a CEO of went completely bankrupt and burned out 40 million Finnish marks of VC money. So at that time, there were people who, some people who didn't talk to me anymore, and some people who felt sorry for me and said, what will ever come out of you? You haven't stayed at any company more than 2 years, so you're not really dependable and trustworthy. You're failing all the time, so people really wonder if you have any skills and if you're taking your career seriously. And what is this, just jumping from thing to thing and never doing anything useful? So that's sort of the state I was in there at number 6. And this was the 6th venture already, and it just was going south. So at that point, I started a company of my own where I did some consulting for others and helped others. So it was sort of scaled down on the ambition level enormously so that I could reach the ambition level. So that was actually a good platform to, not that it took too long. I think I did this for 3 or 4 months and then MySQL came. But at least I got some time to just think about myself and what I'm doing and where I'm heading, and not feeling the stress of everybody thinking that I'm a failure because the company failed. And I didn't feel I was a failure. I felt I was as good then as I ever was. And sometimes when people now come and congratulate me for the MySQL success, I ask them, why didn't you congratulate me earlier? I've been the same good guy my whole life. But people don't behave that way. So then, then MySQL came around and they asked me to join as the CEO. And I believe my only qualification was that the founders of MySQL they probably didn't know anybody else who had ever been a CEO of anything. So that's, I think, why they called me. But suddenly then it just took off enormously, and we increased the ambition level, and we even outperformed the ambition level. And then suddenly everybody wants me to speak at, entrepreneurship societies and other places. So to me, just is a reminder that it takes a long, long time, especially for somebody like me who is a slow learner. Like those who created Google and YouTube, they got it right the first time. They were younger than you are, so you are losers compared to them. Because they were younger than you are, and they started one company, and it just became an instant success and grew faster than anything else. So there's some people like that, or Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook or started programming on MySQL when he was 15 or 16. I didn't care about computers until I had to. So I'm a slow learner, but I do think it carries a message here that Winston Churchill knows so well, that you must go from failure to failure with undiminished enthusiasm. And I can tell you that when we got going with MySQL, one thing that then afterwards one of our investors said impressed on her so much, she said that, because she had seen this, she had seen Match on Sports as well, and she said that she felt it was amazing that the company had just gone bankrupt and everybody was seeing me as a failure, and just a few weeks later I was there thinking of something new to do. And I didn't think of it myself, but that was a reason why we then got a very good investment round done for MySQL. And then we were lucky. So that happened, and at MySQL I did need the knowledge I had gathered from every single failure of my past career and success. There isn't a single step there that I could leave out and have been as successful as I was running MySQL. So I needed to know what I knew about telecom software from the Intellitel times. I needed to understand the new media thing, which we did from the Match on Sports thing. I needed to understand governmental businesses like I did from VTKK, and so on. So it just was an amazing feeling to realize that whatever you do, your time is not really ever wasted. You can waste your time, but if you are mindful about what you're doing, whatever you do can be useful at some later point. So that's sort of my own self-analysis. And now, as an entrepreneur in residence at Benchmark, I've done this number 7 thing again. So I'm now in a job with a very low ambition level. I have no duties or responsibilities at Benchmark Capital. All I'm there to do is help them with something and hopefully find my next company to run. But I'm sort of taking the time of going back to the level there where not much is asked for me and I don't have to produce much, and therefore I can feel happy about what I'm doing, and then go on to the next, I hope. So who knows where it will end? But the notion of failure means that I must go and do something where I might fail. Because if there's no risk of failing, then there also cannot be a huge reward. In business you get rewarded for exposing yourself to something which is questionable. If you take a job where there's no risk, then there's also no reward. Of course, an entrepreneur shouldn't take too much risk. You should be very careful with what risk you take. But if you don't do the unthinkable, or if you don't go contrarian, then you will never strike it big. So that's why another smart guy said that the greatest danger for most of us is not that our aim is too high and we miss it, but that it's too low and we reach it. You may walk around here thinking that you are really smart guys because you made it to Poly or Aalto here, or you created some small business which is doing well. But maybe you actually haven't set your ambition level high enough. Maybe you're a little bit too nice to yourselves, and you actually have much more capacity that you should make good use of. So I really hope that you think about that, because I believe there's a lot of skill and talent here, but I would also urge you to expose it to global competition. Think, could you do this even facing hard competition from anybody and everybody in the world? So now we get into what I think is sort of my advice to startups. And again, so I must say, don't listen too much to advice, because advice can many times be wrong, and you are the ones who must make up your mind anyhow. But I tried to collect here the things I feel are very important to get a good business going. So first of all, you must do something that is yourself. Like if somebody said, be yourself, because all other roles are already taken. And so if you start a business, it must be something where you have a passion, or you cannot not do it, or you are scratching an itch that you have yourself. Like the MySQL founders, they needed an access way from the web to data, so they built it for them, not for themselves, but based on their own requirements. And that's not the only way of doing it, but there must be something that is truly you in the business you are growing. If you're saying just that you'll do cloud computing because it sounds cool, then you will not be more than, maybe you can have a mediocre success, but you could never have a big success unless it really is you, and you feel a force that makes you do it. And the other thing is that that's not enough, because then we have all these people who develop the same products over and over again. I meet software engineers all the time, and they're all developing databases. And I say, come on, why are you all developing databases? Well, because there's so many software developers who have that need for a database, and they studied it in college, and they think, therefore, they should do it. And they forget the other half, which is there really a market demand for this? Because many times, and this is the danger of looking at successes, if you look at the successes, say in the software business, you'll see a lot of database companies. But today the world is different, and the big successes will be in something new that hasn't been seen yet. So identifying what will be really needed in the world is vital for you. So you must do that. And then the other thing, you must know the window of opportunity. And I'm coming back to that, but it's very easy to do something too late or too early. So with those two, you can get going. If it's something that you really, it is you, and there are customers who are ready to pay for it, if you can do it right. It sounds simple, but I see business plans every day, and I point out these primitive mistakes over and over again. And the entrepreneur goes into some spiral of talking about blah, 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 and I'm saying, hey, hold it, hold it. You know, show me first that you have specific skill here and passion, and that there are customers, or that there's a market. So the other thing then is, if you pass that, then the next is sort of the mantra of Web 2.0 companies, where the motto is fail fast, scale fast. And this is sort of a Darwinian view of the world, where the idea is that in the beginning you must allow yourself to experiment and fail, so that you quickly and without spending too much money figure out whether it works or not. And we've seen some software companies in Finland and elsewhere where they keep going, they're big, you know, the press writes about them for many, many years, but they never validate their formula until it's too late and they've spent too much money. And I've made that mistake many times. So fail early, really, really early, and make sure that you can afford to fail many times, because that's how you can find the right way forward. And then when you find it, then you need to scale fast. So until you have figured it out, you need to hold back on expenses and doing things, because who knows whether it really works. But once it works, you must go very fast, because somebody else might be working on the same thing. And maybe you had a Twitter, but then Twitter came around and did it before you. So then scaling fast is another challenge in this country, because we are used to such small environments. So we think that 5 people in a startup is a big startup. And it's true here on the left when you are in experimentation mode. But once you start scaling, you need much, much more to quickly go out in the world. And we are not, we sort of lack the natural talent for it here. If you grow up in India or China or the US, then it's easier, because you have hundreds of millions of people around you every day, so you realize that what scale means. But you know, in Finland, scale may mean that you start from Lappeenranta and you go to Helsinki. But that's not scaling. Scaling is going from Lappeenranta to all of Europe. That's scaling. So it's a very tricky balance how you do this. And then the third box here, or the third thing here, is something I borrowed from Guy Kawasaki, who I think is just an amazing startup expert. He has this motto, don't worry, be crappy. And this is so important in Finland, because we are so used to, and again, I've made this mistake so many times, I'm ashamed of admitting, but you try to fix everything before you go out. And Guy Kawasaki says, if you have a quantum leap improvement in your product compared to everybody else, and if you don't have that, then don't even start a business. So when you have it, that's all you need. Your customers will forgive you everything else. And it was definitely true for MySQL. MySQL was the became quickly the most popular web database. What did Oracle DBAs call MySQL at the time? A glorified file system. I think they were right. MySQL didn't support transactions at the time, we didn't have the feature set, we didn't have the backup, we had nothing. But we had the connection to the web, we had the integration with PHP and with Apache. So it worked wonderfully for building a website, and it didn't do anything else. But that didn't stop MySQL, it actually kept MySQL on track, because we didn't resort to this, okay, let's build everything and we can't launch before we have this, and people call us a glorified file system, so now we must fix it. We didn't. Over time we did, but we focused on just scaling, getting more and more users, and being unashamed of everything else that was so crappy. So it's very important in the high-tech business. This doesn't apply, you know, if you're building nuclear plants or something, don't follow this rule. but in the high-tech business, you can do it. And you see it all over again. Twitter, enormous phenomenon. But the actual architecture of Twitter doesn't really scale well because the site is down all the time, and it doesn't really, they haven't added much features. Well, now they added a few, but for a long time they didn't add many new features. So you could say the same thing, that they were just focused on the quantum leap improvement and nothing else. So if you can remember these simple rules and also follow them, I think that we can increase the success rate in this group. And there isn't much more you need to. I have more slides, but you can ignore them and just, you know, take a nap now if you need. Because I'm really trying here to distill all my failures into advice to startups. But let me know, this applies to startups and high growth startups. If you're building a non-high growth, like a slow growth business, which is great, then you may not need these rules. So I'm specifically focused on high growth startups. So, is the time right? Well, I have just one experience from my own life. We were always too early. That was just the case. We're sitting saying, now is a time for mobile convergence. You know, Intellitel Communications, 1999. Mobile and fixed and internet are converging into one big network. It was very true, very compelling, but 10 years too early. It's happening now. At Visolutions, we actually did the opposite, because we had the world's first Windows-based project management system, the first in the world. It had even been developed before Microsoft Project. And that exactly was our problem. So it was designed by the design paradigm of Windows 1 or Windows 2 or something, but not Windows 3, 3.1.1, which became the ruling Windows. So it had some idiosyncrasies in the user interface, and then it wasn't as easy to use. So there again, you know, well, again, we had been too early. I got confused. So my experience is just that we are always too early. We don't realize that as startup engineers, and startup entrepreneurs, we live in a world where, you know, which is 10 years into the future. We don't realize that the world is much, much more conservative, and it will take many years for consumers to change their behavior. So that's an important learning for me. The other one is the S-curve. So big changes typically come as an S-curve, and it has very much happened to the web, in the way that the web was growing from whenever it was created. Suddenly we had a huge inflation of it, and a bubble was created. Everybody needed to be a web company. Everybody started a web company. Valuations went through the roof. And then it was a bubble, and the bubble burst, and people said, okay, so this is nothing, we need to abandon it. And then everybody abandoned it. And that's why you get this very strong fluctuation up and down. Because people tend to overestimate the effects on the short run and underestimate the effects on the long run. And this is again very, very important. Really think about what it means. We overestimate the effects on the short run, so we think that tomorrow this will be a big thing. And then we underestimate it on the long run, meaning we may not even yet realize how big the web is right now becoming, because now the web trend is there, where the real growth is coming. And this happened to ISDN. I remember when ISDN came to the market, you know, there was this hyping of it sometime in the 70s. I don't even remember what year. And then nobody used it, and it sort of just went away. But then it started coming. And then we had ISDN for 20 years maybe. And now it's going away because we don't need it. But it followed the S-curve. And so many things follow S-curve. So you need to know where you are. Are you heading into a bubble or out of a bubble, and are you seeing the real growth or not? Cloud computing probably is there. Heading up, 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 up. Everybody does cloud computing today. That's a sure sign that you will have a bubble bursting, and then the strong ones will survive. How am I on time? Time now, by the way. Somebody checking?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So, okay, so I said that you could fall asleep and not listen to my next slides, but actually, this is also very important. So, I'll pull back that and ask for your attention. To be successful as an entrepreneur, you must have very good self-knowledge. You must understand who you are, why you are doing things, and what your position in the world is. And it then goes back to what you are driven by. And unfortunately, there are many companies that are driven by the wrong or not the most powerful thinking. And I'll start by one. There's history. Some companies are driven by history. And maybe in some businesses it's okay, like the food business, you say we've been around for 300 years and produced this wonderful bread or something, and that's a powerful thing. But in technology, if you are being driven by your history, you will not be successful going forward. Then there's some who are driven by technology. So they come to me, the entrepreneurs, say, we have this new thing and it's written in JavaScript or Ruby on Rails, and they're all focused on Ruby on Rails. So they're not thinking about who will need the technology. They're just so excited that they know about Ruby on Rails. And it can work for a short time, but it's not sustainable. And then we have those who are driven by ego. And they will never admit it. Really never. So it's very difficult to detect it and very difficult to pinpoint it. But there are people who start businesses because they want to feel good. They do it for themselves only. To build their ego and be famous and be written about and all of this. They give their companies their own names, like Mercedes-Benz. His name was Benz and his daughter was Mercedes. So it's a successful company, so it shows that something good happened. Maybe they brought in professional management. But if you're driven by ego, you won't have a sustainable advantage. And you can go through this whole list. I happen to have a very specific view on this, and I could be wrong, and I'll present it to you. I believe that markets is what you need to be driven by. And markets as opposed to customers. There are companies that are customer driven, and they keep serving customers, but they miss the next trend. Like those who built typewriters. They were customer driven. So they did whatever the customers asked for. Well, the customers asked for better and better typewriters, but those customers never asked for computers. So now all those companies have been killed because the computers came and are actually doing what typewriters did. If they had been market-oriented, market-driven, they would have said, we are in the market of helping people document things. And then they would have realized that they need to do typewriters, and they need to do computers, and they need to do speech recognition or whatever. So I happen to believe that the most sustaining way of running business is to be markets-driven and look at what the market will need, and then just be humble and go back and say, okay, I happen to be an expert on Ruby on Rails, but the market actually now needs PHP or something else, so I'll change. Or the markets are opening here, so we need to do this. We have an office in Finland, but the growth is now in Russia, so we go to Russia. And it's very difficult. You're all smiling now, but I've been in so many meetings where people just refuse to acknowledge this. They're so stuck in their thinking. But if you go back and say, what's the market and where is it going, that can lead you to the right decisions. And they can be painful, because you have to go back and say, guys, for the last 5 years we developed this technology. We don't believe markets will be serving the markets for the long run. So now we'll just milk this cow and develop a new thing that will replace it. And those are painful things to realize. Intel did it very successfully. Intel was originally producing memory. And then, as you know, Andy Grove, the famous CEO who wrote this book, Only the Paranoid Survive, he arranged a meeting for the management team and said, okay, hey guys, now we'll do an exercise here. We all are here in the room, but right now we have each one of us have been fired. The whole management team has been let go. And there's a new team coming in. And it's the best management team in the world. And, you know, and blah, blah, blah. This is, you know, what they look like. And then he said, now tell me, what would the new management team do? And then they started saying, well, if the new management team came, they would stop the memory business and and go into processors. And this took many days, but the essence of it was this. And then Andy Grove came back and said, okay, guys, so either we can switch make the painful switch from memory into CPUs and continue to be the management team. Or if we don't, then I'm sure the board will at some point fire us for not having taken the right step. So that's how we forced their management team to be markets driven. And it's difficult because you don't always know where the market is. So even if you would like to be, it's a difficult thing. I think I'll skip this because I'm getting so excited by the other slides. So then there's something called the Stockdale Paradox, which I learned about in the US, which is just an amazing story. It's so amazing that when you read it, you nearly start crying. It's so terrible and so great at the same time. And you should look it up on Wikipedia and read it. But there was this US Navy Admiral, Jim Stockdale, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam for 12 years and was tortured all those 12 years. For 12 years he was in prison and being tortured every day or every week or something. And they were isolated from each other, the prisoners. But he said that this is the paradox, that the optimists died and the pessimists died. So the optimists said, oh, we'll get out by Christmas, we'll get out by Easter, we'll get out by summer. And at some point they ran out of hope and they died. And the pessimists died because they said, we will never get out of here. And the reason he and a few others survived, one was they supported each other. So they developed a technique when they were brushing the floors of signaling to each other. So when they were torturing one prisoner, the other ones would be brushing their floors and signaling, we love you, so that they could endure the torture. But anyhow, so he said that you must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. So they said, every day I'm ready to take the worst torture in the world and worse than yesterday, because I know that at one point I'll get out of here and I won't look back. And of course this is about human lives and war and really bad things, so business is much easier, it's just business. But it still is a very important thing for entrepreneurs because you so easily go too much one way or the other. And that's why entrepreneurs need to support each other, because sometimes your fellow entrepreneur is ready to give up just when he shouldn't. And then you have those who are overly optimistic and naive and are not realizing that they'll fail tomorrow unless they take action. And having this combination, being able to see the brutal truth, but still in a press interview say that we will win, we will have 200 million in revenues. Wasn't that, Juha, what you said? I just had a discussion here with the CEO. So you must be able to maintain those two sides. And I remember at MySQL when I did press interviews and I said, you know, we will do this and we will do that. And I came back to the organization and said, Mårten, how can you say that? Our technology is crappy, we just lost some key people, sales is not up to budget, blah, 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 blah. And we just had to say, okay, it's true, but long term we will survive and succeed, and short term we can take any pain there is. And I think this is actually, Stockdale didn't know it, but this is the definition of sisu. You know, the Finnish word sisu. Some people say that the definition is 16 wars and we've lost them all. It's sort of the same thing. So then, this will take a long time to go through, so I won't go through all of this, but what is it to be a CEO? And because I've learned over time that I believe that the biggest sort of shortage we have in entrepreneurialism is leadership, good CEOs. Maybe there isn't much VC money in Finland, but there is some. Maybe there aren't enough good coders, but you can find some. Maybe there aren't enough customers, but there are some. But there's always a shortage of good CEOs. So if there's anything I would like you to do is, hone your own CEO skills and try to become great CEOs, because they're always in short supply all over the world. So that's why I sort of tried to give my own impression of what it takes to be a good CEO. And this is an important one. Remember, it's a lonely job to be the CEO. People think that the CEO is somebody who meets with the press and customers and everybody all the time and is very social and has lots of contacts. It's true. But in the really important things, you are alone. Only you can make the decisions. You report to the board, and you have others who report to you. But there's not really anybody you can share your deepest paranoias with. You must be able to handle them yourself. So it's a tough job. So you need to, therefore, know yourself and accept yourself and know your weaknesses. And just read any article in Kauppalehti or somewhere about some CEO who was sacked. Why did they do it? Because he had some weakness that he or she didn't acknowledge. If you know what your weakness is, just hire somebody else who can fix it for you, who can do that for you. Like Peter Drucker said, that the purpose of management is to make individual weaknesses irrelevant. And everybody has weaknesses. We may think that Jorma Ollila has no weaknesses because he is the most famous Nokia CEO ever. I'm sure he has. I'm sure he has enormous weaknesses that we just don't know about because he hired people around him who were smarter than him in those areas. And you must be, even in a small company, you must be open to this and realize that maybe you have no people skills. Maybe you don't know how to sell. Maybe you are over-optimistic in your planning. Or maybe you're a pessimist. Or maybe you're something else that isn't really useful. But you can hire somebody who fixes that for you. And there are many other things that a good CEO needs to do. But the first thing is to just be really honest about yourself. And I bet that most of you don't have that ability yet. Do you have the ability to go to your best friend and say, okay, give me my scorecard. Tell me exactly where I suck. And, without limitations, say the ugliest thing. If it's my bad breath or if it is whatever, tell me. And it's very difficult. It took me many years to get there. I still don't like it. Like I asked those who report to me, I say, can you give me some feedback? And I hope they won't say anything. Mm-hmm. And then they say, well, Mårten, you're always unfocused. I know that. but it's, I don't like hearing it, but it's true. So that's really my advice to CEOs. And then Peter Drucker, to me, is the world's greatest expert on management ever. So read anything he has written, and it's just wonderful. And he has a great list of 8 things that effective executives do. And this looks like such a simple list. But I've seen Sun and Oracle and MySQL and so many companies who just fail on one of these and the company isn't doing well. So just follow these rules if you can, and it's amazing what you can get done. Like this, they run productive meetings. Think for yourself, how many do you know who know how to run a productive meeting? Where everybody can participate, where debate is open, where decisions are made, where you stick to the agenda, where you end the meeting on time. How many can do that? Very few CEOs. So this is really an important list. And then in honor of Peter Drucker, I tried to create my own list of 8 things for executive teams. And I'll leave this as a reading exercise for you. If you Google it, you'll find it on Zach Urlacher's blog. He blogged my text. But I was thinking, what is it that makes an executive team really, really powerful? And I'm not claiming that I'm as smart as Peter Drucker, so if 10 years from now I'll probably edit it and figure out that it wasn't exactly those 8. But it pretty much explains my own leadership principles. And not that I always follow them myself, but I try to. So, what do we have here? Yes, success. Of course, that's a forbidden word in Finland. In Finland, we are not allowed to say we are good or that we will succeed, because you must be humble and, careful about your ambitions. But if you really would like to go for this success, then in Europe we always laugh at Americans when they say, shoot for the stars, land on the moon. But it's true. You must have some crazy, crazy goal, which is impossible. And it doesn't matter if you don't reach it. The alchemists, when they tried to create gold, they actually figured out a lot of metallurgical and chemical things that others hadn't figured out. Because they were relentlessly pursuing this goal of creating gold, which is impossible. But that's why they figured out everything around it. So, we don't learn in school that this is a good thing in startup businesses. It can be a bad thing elsewhere. Like if you are a government official, of course you shouldn't be thinking about those things. But if you're running a global growth business, you should. And then the thing that we should succeed, not thanks to our background, but in spite of it. And this is sort of a personal thing, that many people think that we are defined by where our parents or our siblings or where we grew up or what school we came from or what friends we have. But actually it's the opposite. You've been given some benefits from your background and some drawbacks, and the test is, can you succeed in spite of who you are? And that's why I love these Finnish startup companies who just go out and do something that Tekes has never funded. Take Muslim, this Muslim website, and you say, how likely is that a country which is by constitution Christian, and where 90% are in practice atheists, and where there certainly are not many Muslims, you would create a website for the Muslim community in the world? But that was exactly an example of somebody who looked at the markets and said, let's not define what we do based on our background, but in spite of our background, we'll do something new. I think it's just amazing. It's so rare. And then the notion that assets can turn into liabilities in an instance, meaning something you thought was good suddenly is bad for you. But things that are bad can slowly turn good. And yesterday I gave a presentation where I sort of talked about my own childhood, and I said, when I was a kid, I used to have these raivarit, those tantrums where we were just really angry and hitting everybody and throwing rocks at my siblings, and just really an impossible child. And I always thought it was a weakness in me. But in business, it's so good to be relentless and to not give up and just sit there and say no. And I learned when I was 3 years old how to say no. So a liability turned into an asset somewhere else. And the last one is sort of a philosophical one, but there are innumerable ways to fail. There are a million ways how you can fail. So when people say, what's a success formula? What was the key to success for MySQL? Well, one answer is avoiding 1 million pitfalls. How can you ever be able to avoid 1 million? If you fall into just one of them, you're killed. I think that's startup business. There are millions of them, and a single one can kill you. So that looks scary. But then I claim that even if that is true, what is also true is that there's always a path to success. Always. And there's always more than one path to success. So even in the darkest moment when you think the company is over, there's always a way of getting out of it. And there's always more than one. Meaning, even if you think you have no choice, you always have choice. And if you can just in your mind not be bound by your history or other people's comments or observations, you will be able to find those other paths. Maybe 1 million of them will lead to destruction, and just 2 will lead to success. But you need just 1 to get to success. And not that you should continue with a business forever if it doesn't make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then stop it. But I'm just saying there's always a way out. And maybe Saab is the example now, trying to sell themselves to all kinds of companies, and every time people say, okay, now Saab is over and we'll never see Saab cars again, and then there's somebody else who's interested in buying them. So, if you want to fail, here are some ways that I've successfully employed in my career. The typical one is this: the market is so large, if we get just 1%, we'll be successful. That's such a sure recipe for failure. You will never be successful if you think like that. You never get 1% of a market. You get a significant share or you get no share. There is no 1%. Redefine your market, segment it differently, but you must go for victory and leadership and domination. If you don't, you will not succeed. But I've done this many times. You sit there, okay, 1 billion internet users, I grab 1% of them, they each pay me $1, that's a big business. It never, never, never works. Okay, I won't go into this. These are my big mistakes. I was on a panel once and they said, could you mention a mistake you've made? And I said, I have to mention 8. And I don't think it was a complete list, but those are, you know, mistakes I've made in my life. And then Chris asked me for suggestions for what the Aalto University should do for entrepreneurs. And I have just one piece of advice here. I think that the way I've learned, every single thing I've learned is by observing the masters, being able to watch the masters at work, like Michael Jackson is saying that. That's the best way to learn things. So if you want to create a skill set in some group, you must let them be close to the masters. And this is what she said, Lena Palotier, is that her name, the genetics professor. She said that for her, in her world, it is drinking beer with the Nobel Prize winners. That's sort of the best thing to stimulate people. And the same thing in entrepreneurialism. So that's what, if I were Aalto University, that's what I would, you know, make sure that happens. I would bring here all the Google founders and Facebook founders and Chinese industrial magnates, whoever they are, to just expose the students to them. So with that, I'll stop here, and am I inviting Christina now to the stage? Excellent.
You get company.
And how did I do timing-wise? Because I got a little bit carried away.
We have some more 20 minutes before the... Yes.
Oh, there's stairs here. Okay, you warmed up this mic.
Yes.
But you better come a bit closer. Over there? No.
Okay. Like
I'll
this.
get mine. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello everyone. Everyone is still awake?
Yes.
Yes, great. Mårten and I go way back. The first time we went was in Merisotakoulu.
That's true.
I think I was a baby at that time, but nevertheless, we go way back.
I would have called you a babe.
Thank you. Thank you. At that time, I probably was. It's sort of, I'm very privileged to be here today, and I consider you guys to be very, very lucky that we have Mårten here today. And I really appreciate what Aalto ES and all of you are doing, because this is really fantastic place, and I'm really looking forward to things that you actually do, because we are putting a lot of faith in you, and that's why we are here. But Mårten, you have been interviewed by the most influential media in business and leadership and technology, and I've reviewed several interviews and seen that you've done your PR well. I also noticed during these years that you have sort of grown very steadily, and like you said, you're a bit slow learner, but still I think you built a very good foundation to be where you are at the moment. In year 2006, you actually were awarded the European Entrepreneur of the Year 2006. And I don't know many Finns actually know that this award was the main prize handed out at the Audemars Piguet Changing Times Award, which was created to recognize the European entrepreneur whose private company has had the biggest impact on the largest number of people over the last 3 years. Think about that, the biggest impact on people in 3 years. And here's the guy. I think this is phenomenal.
I hope it was positive impact, which they never said.
This is really fantastic. At the same year, you were nominated the IT Decision Maker of Finland, and I think you were number 9 in Sweden too. Was that so?
Yes, I think I was the 15th most influential IT decision maker in Sweden, although I've never lived there. So this sort of shows the value of these rankings.
Rankings are really great. It's fantastic that you are sort of gathered nominations around the world. But now that you look back at this place, you graduated from here eventually, and you're looking at the young faces here. What do you remember of those years that you were actually studying? Are there anything that you sort of reflect back and see that, yeah, this is still with me?
So I just loved the time here in Otaniemi. It was one of the best times in my life. But we did have many events which were sort of what we call immemorable memory losses. Meaning the next day we weren't really sure what had happened. But it's just a fantastic atmosphere here. And I would say I chose to go here to study mostly because I believed in the sort of the campus and the life at Poly more than maybe the studies. And then I just picked the department with the least technical subject because I've never really understood technology, and I never built anything myself. You know, I should have done something else, but I just thought it was a great place. So, and actually it came back to me when we moved to Silicon Valley in 2006. Yeah, 2003, sorry, getting old. It felt like Otaniemi for grown-ups, meaning it's a place where lots of people come from other places. When you go there, you feel you are really smart to have the privilege of going there, and the moment you arrive, you realize, okay, everybody else is much, much smarter. And you have the same effect here. And then the other thing is that, which is a similarity, that everybody is trying to create something great, but nobody really knows what will come out of it. But at the end, something comes out of it. And then thirdly, there's a great camaraderie and helping each other. So, you know, Americans say good for you, and they genuinely mean it. In Finland, we don't say good for you. You know, we're angry if somebody tries to get in ahead of us in the lane when we're driving. We can't even give them these 3 meters of space because they are coming in on our territory. So, but in Otaniemi, actually, there is this good for you atmosphere. People genuinely want each other's best, and they want everybody to succeed. And that's why it's such a wonderful place. And I'm sure there are others, you know, like the other parts of the Aalto University probably have the same atmosphere. I just never studied there. But that's why I have no regrets that it took me 12 years to graduate.
Can you vouch this? Do you have that spirit? Do you have it? Hey, come on. Don't be so shy.
More or less.
Always. Okay.
More or less.
More or less. Okay. Well, Mårten, you touched several issues there about being an entrepreneur and what it takes, but what really gets you up in the morning? And coffee is not the answer.
What gets me up? Actually, email.
Not Twitter.
No, I love waking up in the morning and what new emails might there be for me and what has happened in the world. That's easily 2 hours in my morning. You know, I wake up at 6 and I can be on my computer for 2 hours before I start thinking about what the day is about.
So is that sort of very characteristic to a typical entrepreneur of this time? Wait for emails.
I don't know, because I think most of you are much more modern. You walk around with devices that give you emails all the time. But I actually pace my email, so I try to not be disturbed by it during the day that much, and then that's why I spend 2 hours in the morning to sort of get it done and over with, so I then can do other things. But, you know, you should ask the people here.
You said that you should be driven by the market. Have you always been driven by the market, or has that sort of changed in your life? Have you?
No, yeah, of course. I made all the mistakes I've been warning about. I have made myself. So this first company we founded, Polycon, we weren't driven by the markets. We were driven by this excitement and ego. You know, we wanted to be CEOs.
Okay, talk about that.
We wanted to have business cards that said something cool.
Well, where have you lost your ego now? Do you still admit it's there?
Oh yes, my ego is very big, but I think I've learned to manage it.
Okay.
So I tell my ego to go, you know, in the background for a while and let me focus on the markets. So sure, everybody has an ego, and
Is it something that really one must have too? So
an ego?
Yes.
Yeah, you must be driven. You must have a passion, and so that is an ego. But the ego takes so many forms. You know, there are egos that are just unbearable, unstandable. You know, people. You know, and I hope I don't have such an ego. So, but I think you do need, and that's what I mean by knowing yourself. You must know what your vanities are.
How do you get to know yourself?
Well, like me, you take 25 years to figure it out slowly and painfully. But you can really go. There are people who are, you know, personal trainers and who have those training programs where you think about it, and it's very powerful. And we always say, okay, that's just soft stuff, you know, that real men shouldn't do. But it's very useful. And then just getting the feedback from people.
Yeah, okay.
But it's so painful to get feedback. So Christina, don't tell me about my
your mistakes and your flaws. Well, you talked about building a team, and every venture capitalist is always looking at the team. Do we believe in this team? But how about building a team? What would you say about how difficult? You started with MySQL when they were 12, was it? So how difficult was it to build a team? And how did you manage?
It is very difficult, but it's not difficult in the sense that nothing happens. You know, you build a team anyhow and you recruit people, but it's very difficult to get it right. And so general advice to people is that when you recruit people, if you get 50% of the recruitments right, you're pretty good. So, because you can never know, there's so many nuances in building a strong team. And you know, we had it at MySQL as well, where there was a time where we had a slightly different constitution of the team. And there was one person who was just brilliant, but he didn't fully believe in the business model. And it sort of changed the whole dynamics of the team. And the moment he left, instantly our team was the best team I've ever had. And I asked myself, how would I have known this? How could I have sort of known it earlier and made the adjustments earlier? Because I didn't know that it could have such a profound impact on the team dynamics.
I think you touched a very important part there when you said that he was very brilliant, but he didn't fit in with the team. What should we be looking at? What should we be looking for, actually, in recruiting the right person to the team?
Well, first of all, you need to look for brilliant people. So that's a requirement too.
Yeah, but that doesn't...
No, and
that's not enough?
So then you need to know whether they fit into the team. So when I recruit, I talk a lot about soft things like values and company culture and how we interact and how I like to deal with people to make sure that they know. And I just remember now, suddenly I remember, I once listened to Jallis Harkimo talking about these similar things, and I was just, wow, he's the biggest entrepreneur ever, I need to learn from him. And he said that when they went on this Whitbread Round the World trip, they had the crew ready, but then they had a party some nights before where they were drinking. And when they got drunk, actually their real selves came out, and there was one person who wasn't suitable. So they switched him out quickly, and that's how Jallis got to sail on the boat. And I'm not saying that alcohol is the right way to figure out, but you need to put people, you know, take them out of their comfort zone to see how they behave when things go bad. Because when things go good, everybody is a good guy. It is when you have challenges that you can see who are truly the great guys.
Okay, so you either you get all the people you want to recruit, either you get them drunk or you take them out to Lapland to survive.
Yeah, or you have something else. It doesn't have to be, the format doesn't matter. I had some people I hired where it was going the wrong way, and I had a really stern and difficult discussion with them. And then some of them turned out to be the best hires ever. Because they said, you know, this is painful, but thank you for the feedback. And they learned from the moment, and I did too. So, but it's very stressed, it's hard. Because, you know, after a day, if you sit there, have a 2-hour really deep discussion with somebody and go through all the problems and, you know, why don't you get along with this guy, and why do you always criticize each other, and why don't you answer his emails first but last, you know, it's heavy. When you get home, you need to relax.
How much, if you're looking at the job of the CEO, you said it's very it's lonely job, but if you look at the logical part of the things that you have to do, and then the magical parts that are the more soft parts, how would you see that they are divided in percentages? How much of running a business is all about magic?
Are you an engineer?
No, I'm asking for percentages.
It's like asking how much do you use your left side brain and your right side brain. And my advice is that if you cut the connection, you're not an entrepreneur anymore. So you need both, and you have it in every moment. Like you can be in the most rational, just doing mode, but then at the same time you must have the sensitivity to realize that somebody is silent because he's upset with somebody else, and you must resolve those things to get teamwork to function.
Okay. You said, I'm skipping some of the things that I planned to ask you, but you have said in one of your interviews that you at MySQL, you loved the users who did not pay you money. WTF?
Okay, so when you're the CEO, you have this optimistic mode, and in a press situation, you just never say anything negative. So that's the first line of defense here. But there actually is, in open source, a benefit of those who are not paying. And I'll give you the example. Oracle, Microsoft, IBM, and Sybase all have products that are free of charge, but the code is not open. People don't use them. But MySQL and Postgres and others, you don't have to pay, and the code is open. Well, that means that those who don't pay, maybe they don't give you money, but they can give you other valuable stuff. Like they can come back and say, your code stinks because I found this bug here. And the user is angry, but actually he has just saved you 10,000 euros. So if you think that way, you can actually make use of it. But I had to do some programming of myself to get over my sort of naturally negative or attitude of, who cares about them, into thinking, okay, they are an asset, and we've chosen this business model, so we have to live it all the way out and just welcome them. And that's why, MySQL, when we sold it into a large company, there was always somebody in the room who was our champion. So there was the decision maker, and the one owning the budget, and the business people, and then there was somewhere a technical guy who had kept promoting us for months and months because we had taken care of him when he was a non-paying user. So I actually believe that it's true, but it took some rewiring of my own brain to start thinking that way.
To allow customers who don't pay.
Yes.
Yeah. But I think it's important. And you also said that you need evangelists, you need people who are speaking for you. So this was part of all the marketing as well.
For us, it was completely at MySQL. We had a minimal marketing budget, and I would say for any business, the best promotion you can ever get is the one done by users and customers.
Definitely. The Ministry of Employment and the Economy just published an evaluation of the Finnish National Innovation System. And being here in Aalto ES, in the survey or in this evaluation, it was concluded that Finland, during this decade, Finland has sort of eroded in the list, and we're not performing as well, and the innovation system is not working properly. I think this is a very important question today. How do you see the roles of different players in the Finnish ecosystem? And now you can really pour crap on everyone because the evaluation already did that, but you are not sort of an official or somebody out there. You have actually lived it through, so you know it by heart and inside out.
So I think it's great when a government or just the public has innovation systems, although to me it sounds like an oxymoron. Innovations don't come out of systems, innovations come out of serendipity. But I understand what they mean. They say we must fund research, we must have buildings where Aalto Entrepreneurship Society can get together and they don't have to pay for it. So if that's the innovation system, yes, absolutely. You need to build a foundation and remove obstacles. But at the same time, you must acknowledge that the greatest innovations, and I'm not talking inventions, I'm talking innovations. And Peter Drucker says an innovation is something that brings a new dimension of productivity to the world. That the major innovations in the world came out of no funding, no system, nothing. They just came out of serendipity. Some really smart people were really lucky and they crossed some boundary. They took something known here and used it in a different place. So, and that you can never produce with a state budget. But sure, you could keep the infrastructure going and the buildings and those things. And I'm not saying they are bad, I'm just saying let's not believe that that is innovation. You know, innovation can be a 12-year-old girl who creates something new and builds it on her own. She doesn't need Tekes or Citra or anybody.
Or anybody. But how about, what would your message be to Aalto University? I think in Finland, lots of people and everyone is expecting a lot of Aalto University. And the students in Aalto are now really moving ahead, and I think I can see the spirit more in here than in the upper levels. What would be your message to Aalto University? What should they be doing?
Well, first the message to everybody, I think, is that it can take 50 to 100 years to build a great university. And even if we start from 3 brilliant ones, we must know that this is a long-term plan. So if we have failure on Aalto for the next 10 years, then I will look at it and say, so what? Because in the long run, it is the best thing that could be done. And what should they do at Aalto? I think they should, I don't know, I'm not that involved, but I would recommend them to not be too bound by the past. Because the fact that we've changed the name and brought together 3 groups gives an opportunity to change other things as well. And of course, some of those changes will be to the worse, and then critics will say that it's bad, but always when you make changes, some will be bad and some will be good. So that's what I would do, and then they can't really prevent things from happening, because people here are already so international and they see so many things, and everybody has friends at many more universities than I had in the 80s. So it's not like you can create an isolationist university anymore. And then we should just remember Mark Twain. Don't let education get in the way of learning.
That's absolutely true. Any questions from the audience at this point? Yes, Kaitsu.
Should I just shout?
Yes, you get to shout.
Okay, so my question is that you moved to US to run the company, so you want to talk a little bit about that, and when should the startup move to US and when to stay in Europe, and that's.
So the question was when to move to the US with a startup. I think that when it comes to those that's a decision of the operations of the company. I think that's where you need to be customer driven. Meaning your company should be as close to as much of your customer revenue as you can. And in the MySQL case, although it's global and everybody uses it all over the world, it was absolutely clear that our biggest customers, our biggest partners, our biggest competitors were all in Silicon Valley. So there was no way around it. And when I moved there in 2003, we had been focusing on the US market for 2 years already. So when I joined in 2001, we said, the US is our market. We hired no salespeople anywhere else. We knew there was great potential everywhere else, and the sales reps always said, we need to hire somebody in Belgium and somebody in Germany and somebody here and there. But I just said, no, let's first build up a presence in the US. So 2 years later, it was very easy to say, the company needs to be run from there, because Silicon Valley is such a focal point for the business that MySQL is in. But then when you look at Skype Skype never had presence in the US, partly because Niklas Sennström couldn't go to the US for, because of court proceedings and stuff. But they just show that you don't have to. And for some other company, it is Los Angeles, or it's New York, or it's Dubai. So I'm just saying, where is your business? Go where your business is. Because, last I checked, companies are about selling stuff to customers.
More questions? There's one.
Yeah,
yes, it was difficult when I got on board MySQL as CEO, and it got more difficult with some people. I think, you know, I did have the background from Solid with a thorough understanding of databases, and I did, in 2001, have the backing of the founders of MySQL. So I think that made it happen, and the business was really blooming. Everybody knew that what was needed was marketing, websites, sales, books, conferences. So, you know, there wasn't a major conflict. But when I joined, I said that, hey guys, if you want me to come on board as CEO, then I'm interested in the role, but you must know that the CEO is the chief executive officer, and the CEO makes the final call. And I said, sure, absolutely, you make the decisions. And then you go to the board for the strategic ones. Well, that's a very tricky thing for a founder long term, to really live up to the notion that you can hire a CEO and you can fire a CEO, and the CEO doesn't, you know, one or the other is fine, but you cannot mess with the CEO.
I think that I was about to, I thought I would ask you about your favorite quote, but I probably just said it. Don't mess with the CEO.
No, that's not my favorite quote.
What would be your favorite quote then?
I don't know. I just love quotes. I have a document with 500 quotes, and I can just read the document and get in a good mood. But one I haven't, you know, you saw it on my presentation, one I haven't said yet, which I think is so profound, is not Mel Gibson. What's the name of this science fiction author? Gibson something.
William Gibson.
Pardon?
William Gibson.
William Gibson. Yes, he said, the future is here. It's just not widely distributed yet.
Thank you, Mårten, and thank you at this point to Krista and Aalto, yes, and let's give a big hand to Mårten and also Flora.